What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Bojan vlog. It's a fine winter's morning, and it's me again, Hobo Bobo, here to give you another vlog entry. So, in this entry, I wanted to give a more grounded and practical subject matter of area, if you will, yeah, so unlike entries of late, hopefully I'll keep this one concise, but so the focus of this entry is I want to talk about how to know if you're on the right path, right? How do you know if you're on the right path, right? And there's actually a number of things I could have titled this entry, right? But I wanted to kind of stay away from the more clickbaity stuff, right? Because the thing about this is you can actually apply this to anything, right? You can apply this to a career. You could apply this to a relationship. You could apply this to anything, right, in life, what I'm about to talk about. So, how to know you're on the right path, 5 steps, right? And the first step to know whether or not you're on the right path. So again, really to hammer it home, right, you can apply this to anything, right? It doesn't have to be a path in terms of a spiritual path or a career path. It could be anything. It could be just little things you're struggling with, a decision maybe, or it could indeed be a bigger thing, like a relationship, or a friendship, or a career path or spiritual path, right? So yeah. So hopefully, or rather, I think that this entry, if you're having kind of any doubts right now about anything, maybe this will give you some insights. Or rather, I believe it will. So, step number 1, or rather, criterion number 1, for you to know if you're on the right path or not. Is it empowering? Yeah, that's the first one. Is it empowering? A path that is going to serve you well, or I say a path, a relationship, a decision, a way of thinking, a way of an identity even, right? For it to serve you in the long run, it has to be empowering, right? AKA, it has to fill you with hope. It has to be like a light at the end of a tunnel kind of a feeling, right? So what is empowering, right? Because it's more of a feeling than anything else, right? What is empowerment? Empowerment is when you achieve something, when you make the best piece of art that you've made ever, right? Or just indeed a really, really good piece of art that really speaks the truth of your soul, if you will, right? To get melodramatic here, right? Or you land that business deal and you're like, yes, not only is this finally, I got this business to a point where it's profitable, but it's also this is going to generate so much value for people and for the market and for the economy, right? It doesn't even have to be anything big like that. It could be thinking of yourself in a certain way. It could be your mentality towards yourself, towards society. A typical one is when you start to think of yourself as a creator, as they say, and you start to be able to you start to think more in terms of what can I do in my life as opposed to what can't I do, right? And you notice the feeling, the change in the way that it makes you feel when you change the way that you think about yourself and about life and about what you can do and what you can't do, right? It could be doing something that you've been putting off, that you really wanted to do, it could be allowing yourself to cheat every so often, right? Because usually we have a very negative perception towards procrastination and junk food and things of this nature, right? You know, fapping, you know, but the one time when you're like, okay, I can give myself this reward because I did this, or this is like the celebratory first step towards me changing my life for the better, and launching myself on this heart-centered path I decided for myself to become an artist, to make my own business, to lose weight, to come out of my shell and become the person I always knew I was, behind all of the self-doubt and all of the, you know, all of the shit that I was scared of, right? That is empowerment, you know, which is distinct from disempowerment, which is what most people in the world are feeling, right, unfortunately, which is, you know, being stuck, you know, like, just kind of doing all right, but, like, not doing terrific, you know. It could be that, to your mind, you know, you have a great family, you have great friends, you have a great career, you know, and your life is pretty good, you know. It could be worse, right? At least on the surface. That's what you tell yourself, right? You're like, there's nothing wrong with my life. This is what you would say to someone else, right? It's like, they'd ask you, how's it going? You're like, yeah, it's okay, you know, it's life, same old, right? This is something that I used to say a lot, like, to, like, colleagues and people, like, to make small talk. It's like, oh yeah, like, you know, after the kind of mandatory, like, how's the weather's great, isn't it? Or the weather's terrible, isn't it? Like, line, right? Opening line, right? It's really hot today. Like, you would then be like, oh, how's it going? And, like, you know, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, it's alright. And you're like, how about you? And you're like, same old, you know, that kind of fucking inane, like, like, small talk shit that you do in a place of work. But, like, yeah. And to your, and you would, if someone asked you, like, how life was, you'd be like, yeah, you know, it's okay, you know, it could be better, but it's not bad, right? But, like, how do you feel? Do you feel like, oh, like, I can't wait for tomorrow to come? I can't wait to get home and work on whatever it is I'm working on, because it's like, it's not even, no one even cares, right? It's like a fan dub I'm working on, you know. I'm a nerd, and like, I did my own fan dub once. I didn't release it on the internet. This is actually a true story for me. Like, there's a thing called abridging, right? Which is where, like, people take usually an anime, right, which is a Japanese cartoon. If you're not familiar with the lingo, right, and they dub their own voice over it, right, and usually they edit it and they change, like, the dialogue to make it more funny and like, kind of punching, right. Yeah, there's one of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is like it's a really good abridged series, right? But, like, yeah, I did, like, the first episode. I haven't uploaded it, but, like, yeah, I just did my own version of it, right? But, like, yeah, as a random example, right? You know, like, it could be you're sewing some clothes, you know, just because you just want to try making your own clothes, or, like, I don't know, like, you're trying to program something, like a program or an app, you know, or you're trying to do something in Minecraft, right? You know, there's a guy I been watching. Again, this is, I'm getting off topic again, but, like, and he does, like, Minecraft programming is a really popular thing to do, like, because apparently it's a good way of teaching kids and you know, and people like that to how to program, right? It's like a doorway into that kind of thing. But, like, yeah, it could be something completely, no one cares. Like, who would care, right? It's just like you writing some poems, you know. It's not like you're not inspiring to be, like, a professional poet, right? Because how many of those exist? I'm joking. If that's your thing, rock it, right? Just find some way to make it work, right? But, like, I'm only joking, right? But, like, I'm such an asshole. But, like, but, like, I mean, if that's your thing, and you go home and you do it, and it makes you feel good, that's great. But do you have that? Because a lot of people don't. Instead, like, you know, they go home when they have to spend time with family, and, like, half the kids are, like, crying and shouting and screaming and like, I want to go here, daddy. I want this, daddy. I want this, mommy. And you're like, yep. I just came home from a long day's work just to earn my daily allowance for the week. And now I come home and the kids are screaming and they're demanding me to buy this for them or buy that for them or take them to this place. Life is all right, right? Anyway, I'm drawing this example out a bit too much, but like, that's what I mean. I hope I illustrated it well there. It's like, is what you're doing empowering you? Does it make you feel like you actually, like, life is actually worth living? Because if it doesn't, then you may have to reevaluate what you're doing. I'm sure, like, if you're at the point where you're even questioning things like, am I on the right path? It probably means you're on the right path, right? Because like someone who's like just in mainstream society and they haven't really had the opportunity, I suppose, to really question what they're doing in life, they're probably not thinking about, am I on the right path, kind of a thing. But anyway, so like, you want to be clear on that. So like, what you're doing, like, and you have to be careful. All of these points I'm going to introduce, right, it's like a seesaw, right? Because sometimes for example, you might have to do something that's slightly disempowering, like in the way of feeling. Like, it's not technically empowering to like do all this admin and do all this research on the market to see if what you're doing actually has an audience, for example, right? It may not be really inspiring for you to do so, but it does facilitate the end goal, which is to become a musician or an artist, or to make this business, or like to do whatever you want to do, become a writer, a poet, right? But the important thing is, at the end of it, the vision is empowering. That's probably the more important thing, right? It's like what you might have to engage in may not be very empowering all the time, right? But like, as long as the vision itself is empowering, aka you know what you want to do, and you know what the motivation behind doing that thing is, right? It could be to heal people, it could be to spread awareness to people, it could be to help people in need, whatever it might be, right? If you're clear on those things and it's empowering to you, then you're on the right path, right? And I say the right path, like, again, you're on a right path, right? So keep going, right? Or you're with the right partner, or you're in the right situation, or you're doing the right thing, or you're making the right decision, right? So that's number one. Number two is, it has to make you slightly uncomfortable, right? It has to introduce a small degree of discomfort in your life. It has to knock you off balance and challenge you and give you like a slap in the face from time to time, right? And I know this is probably a bit less inspiring than the first point, right? Be like empowerment, right? Yay, but this is more like, you know if you're on the right path if it doesn't come easy. This is another way of putting it, right? So like, one thing I realized recently in my life, right, is that I have a lot of interests, right? I can name them all. I like personal development, or I like to call it conscious development, spirituality. I like art, I like music, I like video games, I like sensuality, I like just anything that is really deep and moving and poignant, right? I like nature, but like, those are the main things I like, right? And so I have a lot of interests, and I can spread myself really thin, and I do, right? I do this vlog channel, I do a let's play channel, I do music channel, I do a music channel, and I make music, and like, so I do a lot of stuff, right? But I realized recently that like, a lot of those things, even though like, they did take a bit of effort to get to where I am, right? Because did it take effort for me to learn how to record these videos and edit them, and upload them to YouTube and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Of course it did, right? Does it take effort to continually upload videos? Of course it does, right? But the thing is, like, even though I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to start doing these things more regularly, right? As opposed to sitting on my ass and doing fuck all, just watching YouTube videos all the time, and just sitting at home, right, doing God knows what, right? Oh, I anyway, like, like, even though it took me, it took a bit of discipline to build the lifestyle that I have, to even do some of these things, most of those things are recreational to me. AKA, like, their primary focus, even these vlog entries to an extent, like, I hope, or my hope would be that they help whoever watches them, and, like, you derive some kind of clarity from what I said, from what I talk about. I would hope so, right? And even though I kind of play it off like that as well, like with the, hey guys, it's another Bojanian vlog time, I do these vlog entries primarily for myself. Or rather, I got to a point where I realized that was what I was doing. I wasn't really trying to teach anyone out of a duty or anything like that. It's just like, I just like sharing my insights and doing something a bit more productive than thinking them and then letting them disappear into the ether. Like, instead, I record them and I put them on the internet for future self-reference and for anyone who happens to stumble on them, right? But even so, it's still recreational because I do it for myself, and, like, I'm not trying to help anyone or make any money out of it per se, right? So, like, it's recreational. At the end of the day, like, what I'm trying to do is music, right? At least what I'm discovering, right? It's still, like, obviously, like, it's still open-ended in many ways, but, like, for like, recently I've really found that, like, my brand of healing, which is what I want to do, right, is probably in music, right? Because I have the skills in it, I have the propensity towards it, and it's the one area where, like, I feel that I could make some real difference, because, like, I feel like I'm a decent talker, right? I'm a decent kind of relayer of information and like this kind of thing, but, like, I don't know, I can't really see a way where it can really help people as much as my whole music thing can, at least to my mind right now, right? But anyway, that's a personal example. So, but the thing is, right, doing these, even though it takes a bit of effort to edit them, like, it's pretty easy for me. If, in all honesty, like, making these vlog entries is pretty easy. Like, all I have to do is just talk in front of a camera, edit that shit, upload it, write a description, add some tags, add some timestamps for easy watching, and that's it. It doesn't take a lot of kind of, like, involvement, whereas music does. Even playing the piano, right? Like, it's not like, you have to, like, keep building your vocabulary and your repertoire, and, like, you have to keep playing and practicing and practicing. With composition and production, you have to keep practicing that, so you have to find new sounds, and I hope you can draw your own parallel to something in your life, hopefully, that is a path to mastery. Anything that's worth doing, and I guess I'm talking more specifically in terms of, like, when I say the right path, I mean something that is going to be like a facilitator in your life, as opposed to something that's recreational. Recreation is really important. Don't overlook it, right? That's the other thing. That's the thing that came with my other realization. It's like, even though I realize that, this kind of thing for me is recreational, it's still important. So I make time to do it for me because it nourishes my soul when I do these entries. It's something that I do that gives me joy to do, right? Which is why I do them. And that's what they do for me, right? But the path to mastery that is appearing in my life is music. So in your life, there's something that, like, you want to do, right? But it's not easy because it involves a lot of, like, research and learning and practice and iteration, to even just make something that's decent, right? That's probably the right thing for you to do, right? Because the way that it works is, in order for you to generate value most of the time, you have to work at it, right? And not only that, like, it's something that kind of, like, funnily enough, like, when you do it, this is another way you can tell, right? When you do the thing that is your path to mastery, that makes you slightly uncomfortable, aka, like, you would probably rather just sleep in for that day and try again tomorrow, kind of a thing. They're like, oh, maybe I'll do a vlog entry or a let's play instead, because making music, I'm gonna have to, like, find the sounds and, like, and sit down with it and analyze it and compare it with other tracks. It's gonna be a lot more work, right? But when you actually do it, particularly if you haven't done it for a while, right? So for me, like, traditionally, like, I've been like, I'll do a bit of production, for example, music, over the course of a week, and then I won't touch it for another 2 months or something. And it's like, and then I come back to it and I actually do it, and I find myself suddenly coming back to life. Because sometimes, like, particularly in adult life, right, you kind of like go through periods where you're just kind of like on autopilot, and you don't really feel inspired, and you don't really feel like you're making massive leaps in your life, right? Until you're forced, I guess, to sit down and do whatever it is you're actually supposed to do, right? And when you actually do what you're actually supposed to do, quote unquote, right, and you do it, even if you don't finish that thing, but you do it, like, you suddenly, like, it's like surfacing. It's a weird feeling. It's like, maybe like for the past month your thoughts haven't been as clear, or like you haven't been as sharp, or you haven't been as inspired or as sensitive, right? But the minute that you do that thing, right, you make your art, you work on your business, you make those improvements or those changes that you've been putting off, right, and you actually do something towards it, suddenly, like, after you've done it, you're like, whoa, I feel awesome. I remember, like, what it's like to be, to like, my mind switched on suddenly. You know, I suddenly remember all the shit that I forgot about. All the stuff that I want to do, the ambitions coming back to me, right? That's what it does. When you put the work in, you know, and you finally do the thing that you've been putting off, you're like, it kind of gives you this like, senzu bean. Like, it's a nerd reference, right? It's Dragon Ball Z. But, like, what that means is, like, it gives you kind of like this, it revitalizes you, right? And it also keeps you honest and grounded and real, right? Because, like, I'm sure you notice this, right? When you actually put work into something, and like, and you actually, like, you're forced to have to work on something, and you know, and go through the self-doubt and all that shit, right? When you actually do it, it makes you kind of a bit more sympathetic. It makes you a bit more empathetic. It makes you a bit more kind of like connected with life. That's how it makes you feel, right? And it makes you kind of like have the thoughts like, in a good way, I ain't shit, right? Because usually, like, because sometimes, like, particularly when you haven't been doing what you're supposed to do, like, you're kind of like a bit like, you're kind of a bit more judgmental. You're kind of a bit more like, well, I don't like this, you know, and like, okay, well, I don't know about that. You're kind of a bit more in that kind of a modality. But when you actually do something, and you work towards something, particularly something creative, I guess, right? This is probably the big thing, because so you can do something that's more routine, like, for example, recreational things. They're supposed to be more ritualistic. They're supposed to be, and that kind of thing has its place. You want to do rituals and activities in your life that actually nourish you, so that they give you energy to then do the creative work, right? But the creative work is what I'm talking about. Like, the creative challenge of making something out of thin air when you don't know what you're doing, and like, there's so many factors, and it's like, you're going to be doing this over and over again, and it's like, it's so overwhelming. But when you actually sit down and do it, I think there's a great book on it. It's called the War of Art. I forget who wrote it, right? But like, it's exactly this, right? He talks about like resisting making your art because you're just scared, and like you can't be bothered, and it's just so much pressure, and it's like, but when you actually sit down and do it, that's all you have to do, is just sit down and do it for like 10 minutes or half an hour a day, right? And do something, right? Make sure you do something. Write one paragraph, you know, do a drum section for one 4-bar part, right? As long as you do something productive, that's all you need to do. And then the rest of it, you can forget about it. You've earned the rest of the day off. And that's how you actually feel, right? So like, so the reason I say pick something that makes you slightly uncomfortable is like, it pushes you to grow, right? And growth is how you become a decent human being, really, right? Maybe it sounds slightly, not crass, but like presumptuous, I guess, to say that, but that's what it means. Because like sometimes when you don't have a path to mastery, when you're not doing something that isn't path of least resistance, right? Because like, we can be a bit enamored, and I am completely guilty of this, with the idea like, I just want to do things that feel good. I didn't go on this path to do shit that sucks. I came on this path to do shit that I actually care about. But like, and the thing is, yes, absolutely, and this is the next point, right? But like, at the same time, like, if you're always picking the path of least resistance, and you don't, and you're always putting off the work that could be done that would generate value for you in that way, like, so like, for example, like writing anything or doing any creative work, like building a business, like, because like there are factors that you don't know, and like you have to work them out, and it's not the same as like following a checklist. It actually requires you to face the unknown, and failure and trial and error, and it's just like you don't know what the fuck's going to happen, and it's all on you as well. If you make a mistake, you lose the time, you lose the effort, and it's just like, and if you do it and it turns out crappy, it's all on you, because you're just like, why can't it just be better? I made this piece of music, but it's not good. It's just like, I listened to this other piece of music, it's amazing, and it's just like, this sounds professional, but the thing I made is not professional. So frustrated, so self-doubt, But when you go through it, and you're just like, you take it a step at a time, you baby step it, right? Like in that entry that I made, baby stepping. What was the other point I made? Baby step, and I think it was champion love first. It was that entry. When you actually do it, you're like, I did it. Like, it's like a fucking load was lifted off my shoulders. And I'm like, I did it, and it's hard. And because it was hard, I feel so connected with all of those people who work. That's how you feel. All of the other artists and businessmen and women, who work at their craft. I feel like I'm one of them, because that shit's hard, but like, damn, is it worth it? Because, because if I sustain this thing, and like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I have to do so much. I have to do this for the rest of my life. That's how you feel and think, right? But like, if you just do it once a day, every other day, once a week, and you build a discipline towards a path to mastery, then it will keep you honest and real and grounded and decent, I suppose. Anyway, that's number 2. Number 3, getting a bit long already, right? Number 3 is it has to fill your heart with love. It has to make you feel loving at the end of the day, right? So the previous point, right, the pitfall, or rather the mistake that people make is that, yeah, they take the path of least resistance. There's a thing called like the frog in boiling water phenomenon, where like, a frog slowly gets boiled alive because it doesn't detect the relative changes in temperature, right? The same thing happens with us human beings. Like, we do things and we think like it's harmless, right? But if we don't check ourselves, right, or I say check ourselves, like if we're not too careful, or if we're not careful enough, we can kind of fall off the track and then get sidetracked or have setbacks, right? And that's fine, right? But the thing is, like, you have to, when you do suffer a setback, you have to kind of process the pain, and to kind of like restart yourself. Because the people who run away from that are the people who stay there, right? It's not as hard as you would think to keep going. It just means you have to be honest with the pain that you feel when you suffer a setback. The people who try to run away from that pain and stuff it down and pretend it doesn't exist are the people who then stay on the path, right? And again, like I mentioned in the entry about like connecting with pain, it's because nobody teaches you how to do this shit, right? But like, if you embrace the pain, if you're just like, if you let it to exist, and it's pain, it's here, right? Then 9 times out of 10, right? I just give like 10% of wiggle room there, but like you will get back on your path if you're honest with yourself. That's the pitfall for number 2. Number 3, you can set off on a path that makes you feel empowered. You know, like whenever you win, it makes you feel sick, right? It makes you feel dope. It makes you feel good about yourself. It makes you feel nang. That's a word that hasn't been used for a while. You know, and it also, it's challenging. So it's a path to mastery, and you do it right. But like the thing is, at the end of the day, if there's not a payoff of love and joy, and like, you know, if you can't be a little bitch, basically, some people might be like, what the fuck is this? in the masculine language of things, like if you can't be a pussy and a little bitch at the end of it, and swoon over like the way it makes you feel, like, oh, I made this music, it's so good, and you're listening to it over and over again, or I wrote this poem, it gives me goosebumps, or this novel, or like this business, and you look at it and you look at the smiles on people's faces, you're like, and you're like, hell, fuck yes, I made a positive change in this person's life. Yes, like that's how you feel on the inside, and it fills you with joy and love. Then you're on the right path. So look out for anything that is empowering, right? It's a bit subtle, the difference, right? Empowerment and love, right? Empowerment is more like it makes you feel like you can do things. It's like, yes, like, you know, you're like, okay, like I'm inspired to take action. That's empowerment, right? Or and I don't feel like a piece of shit. I feel for once like I'm worth something, and because I feel like I'm worth something, I can go and do something that I actually want to do, right? It's more kind of like masculine, I suppose, right? Whereas love is more feminine, at least energetically, right? It's more kind of like, it makes you feel like a kid. It makes you feel like, you know, you're watching Lion King again or something, you know. It just makes you feel innocent and pure, and like, and everything comes around. You see, in the end, it has to make you come back to love. Because was that not your motivation to get started on this in the first place? To feel love? To feel joy? To feel happiness? So if the path that you're on does not promise that, does not make you feel that when you achieve it, you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path. Make it a secondary path. But your primary path, or your relationship partner, you know, again, you can apply this to anything, right? Or your decision, it has to be loving in the end. It has to make you feel like, oh, like I can't wait for this to happen. I'm so excited. Like that's the feeling you must have when you do it. Because it's the only way to not become a psychopath in the day, right? To become this weird, like, us versus them, like fuck them kind of mentality, right? And again, like with the other thing, where you slowly kind of like become like, you know, it's like weight, right? And this might be a bit sensitive, but like as an example, right? Like people, like when you become overweight, right? And people who slowly become overweight, they like, it's like, you know, is that person thinking, oh, you know what would be fun? To slowly eat myself until I'm overweight. That would be kind of cool. Like, no, they're not thinking that. They're probably thinking like, I'm just going to eat this one donut, you know, and like, I'm not fat. I should be alright. I don't want to become fat. That's not the plan. And it's not the plan. It's never the fucking plan to get fat. As an example, you know, it's just using a random example, but like, in the same way, like, no one plans to like, not do awesome stuff or to not do what they love. It's just like slowly, like, when it proves difficult, like, you know, they slowly kind of like, and this is normal. I do it, you know, but the important thing is to keep rising up to it. You know, failure is not the end of the road. You only fail when you give up. And like I did in that entry ages ago, I think it was like a couple of years ago now, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where I talked about giving up is not actually giving up. You know, you can always come back to it, is what I mean. Even if you give up, right? And actually, this is a point that I'm going to get into. It's one of the points, one of the five criterion, right? 5 criteria, sorry. Gotta pluralize that shit. Yeah. So, point 3 has to fill your heart with love. Like, don't let your path make you, like, callous and contemptuous towards other people. And like, even if you feel that way, because honestly I do sometimes, like, towards, like, what I see in society, I'm like, fucking, society's fucked, right? Like, I make entries about it sometimes, right? I make comments about it. I think if I do it, upload it, like the previous entry, right, I talk about it briefly, but, like, I think I do, actually, at the end of it, right, where I just talk about random shit, right? I do feel that way about a lot of society. I see people on the streets and they're, like, smoking weed and shit, or they smell of weed and they're, like, blaring music out of their cars and they're, like, shouting obscenities at people. I'm like, I don't live in a very good part of London, but, like, aside from that, like, I'm also like, fucking society's fucked, right? But what counterbalances that is when I go home and I can play the piano and I can work on music and I can do these things, right? Like, and I have something to look forward to. I have something to live for. Like, life is not just like this fucking thing where, like, it's like, I gotta watch out. I gotta watch out. I gotta watch out for these fuckers who are gonna fuck me over. It's like, I have a part of my life that is love, that is full of love, and I can go back to that at the end of the day. Home sweet home, right? I did an entry about that, where I said, like, you have not found yourself. If you're still like, I'm not extrovert enough or curious enough, it's like, you haven't owned yourself yet. When you own yourself, all of that stuff will come, you know. So, number 3. Number 4, to know if you're on the right path, it has to stand the test of time, right? And this is not something, obviously, it's written in that sentence, right? You can't it's not something that you can know until the time comes, right? But what do I mean by this? Whatever you do in life, be it vlog entries or anything that you really, really enjoy, right? There will come a point where you will kind of get fed up of it. You will kind of get sick of it. You know, you will kind of start to question why you're doing it, whether it can actually be legitimately doable for a career or for whatever it might be, right? You start to weigh up all of the cons of it. It's like, well, it's not very sensible to do this thing. I don't know how long I can sustain it for. I don't know if I want to be doing it for the rest of my life and only that thing. And you start to weigh all of the cons, right? And you legitimately start to, like, be like, oh fuck, damn it, why? And you start to go into that kind of, like, despair, right? But if it is the right path for you, you know, or the right relationship partner, if you fall out with them and you're like, fucking this bastard or this bitch, you know, and like, you're like, I really hate them right now. And it's like, if you know, if they are the right partner for you, like, maybe you break up with them. You're using this as using the relationship partner thing as, maybe you break up with them or take a break or whatever it might be, you know, and you date other people, you know, and you really launch yourself into it. You really say, like, okay, I'm over them. I'm going to date new people now. I'm going to start fresh. It's going to be awesome, right? But, and it doesn't apply so much with relationship partners as it does with, like, a career or something like that. But, like, if you try other things and you put it down, you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. Let me try something else. And you put it down and you try other things, right? Then you come back to it, right? And then you try it again. And then, like, eventually you're like, oh, but, like, you find a new thing and it's like, oh shit, but this really puts a damper on, like, my expectations of what doing this might mean for me. Shit, maybe I need to look at something else again. And you try other things again, right? And then at the end of the day, you come back to it. And you're like, I still love this thing, even though at some point I fell out of love with it. In the same way that, like, I came to hate this person's guts, so I broke up with them, and then I started dating other people. And then either I met that same person again, or I met someone similar to them, and I fell in love again. That's how you know that that's a keeper. you know. It's almost crucial that you fall in that out of love with it, because it's a step that has to happen in relationships, in, you know, a career path or a pursuit, a path to mastery. You will at some point fall out of love with it, because life is not just that one thing. Life is like, you get older, you know, you have to think about money, you have to think about love, if it's, you know, like relationships, like you have to think about this, you have to think about that, you have to think about all of the things you're missing out on, like a trip around the world, or like trying new cuisine, trying new culture, you know, launching yourself into new experiences, like dirt biking or like cliff diving, or whatever you want to do, right? There are points in your life when you want to do those things and you're like, maybe I should do it, and you go and do it, right? And you put down that other thing for a second. But when you come back to it, and you're like, oh shit, I forgot about how much I love making music, or writing poems, or building businesses. It's the right path for you. Or, you know, this type of business. It stands the test of time. You can fall out of love with it and fall back in love with it. That's probably the crucial thing. Not necessarily that you love it so much that you keep loving it for the rest of the time, but you can fall out of love with it and then fall back in love with it. And that's how you know it's the right path for you. So that's number 4. And obviously the pitfall is like, you know, you stick, you try to force yourself to love something, and then like eventually you don't come back to it. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? If you don't come back to it, it means it wasn't the right path for you, right? So in that sense, it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, number 5, final one, is it doesn't chain you up. It doesn't keep you locked up, shackled, chained up, trapped, you know. If the path is right for you, it has to create space for you to live an abundant life, right? It should not keep you shackled to like one activity or one type of activity, one type of thing that you're doing, you know. And if you stop doing it, everything's fucked, and your whole life falls to pieces, you know. It can't, like, it has to facilitate you to live an abundant and full life. It has to give you the opportunity to do other things that might be an extension of this one thing you're doing, or indeed something else that you try that will enrich your life experience as a human being, right? So if you have something that you're overly precious about, that you're like, oh, if either like you feel like if you stop doing it, everything's fucked, or like you're kind of getting fed up of it because you have to do it all the time, but you don't see any way for you to actually rescue yourself away from it. Like you're becoming conjoined with your path. Your path is not giving you room to breathe. In the same way, a relationship partner, you know, if that partner, that boyfriend, that girlfriend, that husband, that wife, that FWB, right, does not give you the space to expand and to try new things, and to go and do your own thing and come back to a relationship as an individual, you're not on the right path, and you're not with the right partner. You know? Again, throughout this entry I've been saying like you're not with the right partner, or you're not on the right path. It's like, that's open to, you know, that's not an ultimatum as usual, you know, my disclaimer of like, whatever, anything I say is never an ultimatum. If anything, it's a guideline. So like when I say it's not the right thing, I mean like, it doesn't mean that as long as you're doing it or you're with that person or you make that kind of decision, you're fucked. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that like, if you want to have something that is going to support you in the long run, be it career or a relationship partner or a type of decision-making matrix, like how you make your decisions, right? Your mentality, right? If you want that thing to support you for a long, long time, for the rest of your life, potentially, then you have to hit these 5 criteria. And that doesn't mean that that if you don't hit those 5 criteria right now, you're fucked. It just means that that's the direction you want to go in. So again, I'll reiterate those. Number 1, it has to empower you. Do not settle if you're aiming for something long term for anything that makes you, at the end of the day. Again, you might have to do things that aren't really exciting for you, but as long as at the end of the day what you're doing makes you feel a sense of pride and makes you feel like you're worth something, it's empowering. Number 2, it has to make you slightly uncomfortable. Because if it doesn't make you slightly uncomfortable, it means like you're not growing. It means you're not like learning how to master this one thing so that you can create more value for both yourself and for other people. You know, it's not helping you to make more beautiful things that you might want to make in the future. Surround, comprise your life, or fill your life with recreational activities and other things, that nourish you, right? That make like, maybe you like video games, maybe you like other hobbies, right? Do the hobbies that you really want to do, right? So that they can nourish you, right? But then when it comes to actually doing something that is going to like really be your contribution to yourself, to other people and society, pick something that is not easy. That you see it like being the thing that births many beautiful things, like beautiful art, beautiful like societal effects, right? Helping people, inspiring people, But it takes work because you have to dig deep and you have to create, right? It's a deep creative pursuit, right? And as such, it doesn't come easy. You can't just take the pill, right? It has to come with work, right? And it has to you have to occasionally change the way that you think, and you have to deal with self-doubt and frustration and many kind of sometimes emotional roller coasters, right? But at the end of the day, if you go through with it, you can see that it's going to be empowering you. It's the right path. And I mentioned love there. That's number 3, right? It has to fill your heart with love. So not only is it something that's going to give you success, right? And to make you into a badass, but it also has to fill your heart with loving innocence. With when you picture it in your mind, and when it actually happens, when you see the smiles on people's faces and the comments that they give to you, and your own kind of sitting there and seeing your art painted out, you're like, yay! If that's how it makes you feel, you're on the right path. If it fills you with love, that's super important. Do what you love, motherfucker. Okay. Number 4. It has to stand up a test of time. You have to be able to fall out of love with it, because it will happen. When you're doing something for that long, when you're with someone for that long, eventually there'll be moments where something else comes along, or that person or that thing is not giving you what you need exactly in that moment. And you might be tempted to go somewhere else, and you might do. But if you end up coming back time and time again, if you don't, then it means it wasn't the right path. But if you do, it's the right path. And finally, number 5, it has to not enslave you. It has to facilitate your expansion, right? You have to be able to be I can do whatever I want because of this thing. Not I have to focus on this one thing, otherwise I'm fucked. If you think that, it's not the right path for you. Keep looking. And I mentioned this before, but an additional thing I'll say is even with number 4, right? It should be what was number 4? Yeah, it's a standard test of time. Okay, or number 5, sometimes, or all of these really, sometimes you have to do the opposite, right? But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, with all of these, right? It's okay if you don't always feel inspired. It's okay if you don't always feel empowered. It's okay if you don't always feel loving. I think that was the one, number 3. I didn't quite mention it on, but if you don't feel loving, Like sometimes you have to like resist what people put in your face. Like people see that you're doing something you love, and if they're not doing something they love, they might feel jealousy or whatever it might be, right? Or they just might feel an instinctive desire to tear you down. It might happen, you know. I'm just saying, it might happen. Then you might have to be a bit tough in the sense like you can't let their opinions derail you. You know, you have to learn to like respect them at the end of the day, but also to like to you have to keep going, right? And sometimes that takes willpower, and it's not pleasant. But like at the end, but then like an hour later, you're like, I'm making my art, and it makes me feel like a fucking, oh, it's so good. Oh, I love, this is exactly what I want, what I need to be doing. If you feel that way, yeah, I'm on the right path. But anyway, number 5 was, it can't chain you down. It has to be a facilitator, not like an imprisonment. And this is a tricky one, because like sometimes like we're so desperate to find something like that, but we haven't ironed out all of the kinks yet. Sometimes all it takes is a bit of like realignment. It takes a bit of shifting around. Maybe you just need to, maybe you're on the wrong platform, or maybe the type of relationship dynamic is wrong. Maybe you need to be like in a more open relationship, for example, or something like that, right? You know, sometimes, usually what it takes is a bit of tweaking, right? But like, if you're doing something and it makes you feel trapped, in essence, then either change what you're doing with that thing so that it facilitates you being more expansive in your life, or drop it and try something else. So cool. Long ass fucking entry. I was actually hoping this entry would be like about half an hour, but it ended up being like almost an hour. What's new? Young shrew. So cool. Just 5 steps there. Take it or leave it. AKA, you know, hopefully it was insightful for you. If it was, great. Yeah, so cool. I'll leave with that. This is the most awkward ending ever. I hope you guys are well, as usual. I hope you are continuing to move towards your passion, your love, and your dreams. And I hope something like this will help you. If it did, then yeah, like it'd be really cool to see. It'd be really cool to see. I would appreciate if you dropped me a comment telling me how I helped you. AK, like, you know, like I like reading comments where people benefited from something that I said. So it's just nice. It's one of those things. So cool. Yeah. Until next time, guys. Hope you do well and keep moving towards your dreams. So cool. This is Bojinjin signing out. Until next time, guys. Peace out. There's a hole in my glove.